This is a print from a recent photography outing that I'm going to talk about and break down today. And I'm actually going to give this print away as well. So hang around to the end of the video and you can find out how you can be in with a chance of winning this. One of the most important things you can do to actually improve your photography faster is be able to look at your own images and work out what isn't quite right with them. What could you have done better next time? And I think this is something that a lot of photographers actually overlook, but it's something that can be done really easily because you can use your existing images and you can easily find the time to do it as well when you're not out and about with your camera. It's something that you can do when you're sat at home in the evening instead of scrolling on your phone or whatever else it is that you get up to. Not saying you get up to anything, but you know what I mean. I'm going to go through the images I took on this outing and break down my thought process, and I'm going to critique the image that I've just shown you and a couple of others, and I'll mention a bit about how I've edited it as well. So earlier this week I was here, which is in the Peak District, and it was forecast to be a really foggy day. I actually shot a video while I was there, although this video wasn't intended at the time, so part of me wishes I could go back and show more B-roll of it to explain my thoughts a bit more. Basically, I thought from all the weather forecasts and everything else that the fog was going to be a lot more intense than it was. When I got there, it was limited to the valleys and I was a little bit higher up, so the fog wasn't as high up as I wanted. And it's at that point, if you've ever been out with a plan in mind that isn't going to come off, you start to panic and wonder what on earth to do. Given I needed to record a video, I stuck to my guns. I'm really glad I did, actually, because it ended up being better than I expected. The area in which I was shooting ended up being right on the edge of the fog, which I think can often be the perfect balance because you get the light spilling in, like in this image here, and you also get that fog to give it a little bit of atmosphere. So I was kind of lucky in that regard. Believe it or not, these kind of light rays that I'm showing in these images are something I've never actually managed to photograph before. I've photographed in fog many times, but I've never actually experienced these in a place where I've been able to take decent photos. So I'm overall really pleased with how these came out. In terms of the camera I used, I was using my Sony a7R5 and I was testing out this, which is the 28 to 105 f2.8 art lens from Sigma. Normally I use the 28 to 70 and they're kind of my preferred focal lengths, or focal ranges rather. But this just gives that little bit of extra reach, and for stuff like woodland photography, even mountain photography, if you want to punch in on detail, that can be really handy. This is just a loaner from Sigma, but I am really tempted to add this to my arsenal. I love photographing woodland. Whilst I've been concentrating on things like the moments in between this year, woodlands are a place of real calm to me. They're a place I can go and really switch off and just immerse myself in the surroundings without all the noise of kind of suburban life, I suppose. And this to me is probably the perfect lens for doing this. I don't like to often go in beyond 100mm. Quite often I don't even like going that far, but I really enjoyed using this. It's quite a big lens, as you can see, but I think for something like this, it is actually really good. As for the aperture, 2.8, I'm always, as a filmmaker, drawn to really low aperture lenses because I like filming at low apertures. For photography, I don't often shoot wide open. So if it's just for photo purposes, I'm not sure how needed that is, but I am always thinking about the filmmaking element of it when I purchase lenses. So yeah, all of these shots were shot on this lens. This is the first shot I took and it is quite cropped in. I like the light and the mist in this, and as soon as that sun came up and hit the ground, the mist started getting even more intense. I'd have liked to have been able to see more of this tree. I have actually shot this tree before, but I kind of like the atmosphere and the mood in this. I said in my last video that when I take a photo, and I think this is a really good practice to get into, is to try and work out before you press the shutter button what kind of mood or feeling you're trying to invoke. As I mentioned, I often feel a real sense of calm when I'm in the woodlands, and that is something that I'm trying to transfer into my photographs. To me, the contrast in this is just too intense to convey that feeling, so I feel a bit of a disconnect between myself and the image. So this isn't one that would likely go much further than being on my computer. It's not going to make it into my portfolio. I'm probably not going to print this one. Moving through this next one, I really like the arrangement of stuff in this scene, and I like the juxtaposition of the man-made stuff and the trees as well. Made a bit of a mistake here. I think it's because I was shooting, it was nearly 70mm, so this is why this has happened. But it was, well, this one's only a f5, but I was focused on the tree, and as a result, the gate and the fence here in the bottom left are out of focus. I tried shifting up to F11 and I focused on the gate and the fence here, which is in focus. However, the tree in the background are slightly soft. What I should have done is probably shot F11 and focused on the tree, and hopefully that focusing distance will have brought this into focus as well. I'd have had to have checked it. I might be able to combine the two. I haven't tried it. In all honesty, it's a nice image, but I don't think it's a strong enough one to warrant me actually going forward and doing that. This I really like because I like focusing on things that make you ask questions like, why is this gate here? What's it used for? My issue with this one is the blue sky, and I could probably crop in a bit further than I already have, like that. But I feel like that kind of, it loses something. I like shooting at 35mm. That's my preferred focal length, and this isn't equivalent to that. It feels punched in, and it just feels a bit too constricted. I prefer it wider like that, but the blue sky is just, it loses something a little bit, and I think that's my kind of issue with that image. This is a shot I've taken before, later in the year, and I like the layering in this. The wire on the wall is a bit off-putting though. I think if it was a stone wall without a fence, this shot would be a lot better, but it's quite nice. Again, the blue sky is a bit distracting. Quite often when I shoot woodlands, I want to omit the sky because it's often brighter than anything else in the scene, and it can be quite a distraction. So as I moved forward, I was kind of walking into this scene, down this wall, you get into more of the woodland. And that's when things started to change a bit. It's actually a very heavy crop, as you can see, which I don't normally do, but that is one of the benefits of shooting with a 60MP sensor. This one was, the normal shot was actually shot as zoomed in as you can get. It was shot at 105 and I've cropped more. So this is probably more like, I don't know, a 180, 200mm equivalent. I love the colors and the depth in this and the light on this silver birch here. It does feel a bit more of a snapshot though, rather than something that conveys any kind of feeling or emotion, and I think that is what this shot is lacking. When I'm out and I'm taking these, I do seem to rely on instinct quite a lot rather than technically thinking, how should I compose this? And I guess that's something that probably comes with experience more than anything else. Also, I was shooting handheld. I was shooting on auto ISO, which is what I normally do. In scenes like this, maybe it's not best practice, but the fog was changing very quickly. I was filming at the same time, so my video camera was on my tripod and I just didn't have the time to do it. These were just snapshots as I was trying to make another video. We now get on to this image, which is the image that the print is of. And I love the light in this. Now, because of where the sun is, because of where the fog is, there isn't much leeway for maneuver left and right. You move right and these beams of light disappear. Same thing if you move left. And my issue with this photo is that, and you can't really tell unless you look really closely, is that on this left-hand side, there is this small tree that comes in here and obscures the silver birch. What I've done is I've edited this image so that that doesn't take away your attention from what's going on. I think this area of the image here is strong enough to pull your eye away from it, but it's not an error, it's not a mistake, because I was aware it was there. There was literally just nothing I could do about it though, because if I moved to the right enough to make sure this didn't obscure it, I didn't get these light beams at all. The scene completely changed and it wasn't representative of that feeling of calm. And also when you see something like this, awe as well, it didn't convey that if I moved to the right. So I was almost like forced to capture this scene with that tree creeping in from the right hand side. This is another variation on it that I quite like. It's a bit more high contrast, it's very atmospheric, but I think I prefer something like this. It feels more inviting than something like this, which I don't know. This invokes a slightly different mood to me, and I'm not sure I can put my finger on why that is. As ever, when you find a scene like this, I did take different variations of it, and I do quite like this wider shot of it. I think it's really quite inviting. This area of lightness at the top here is potentially a little bit distracting, as I mentioned before, avoiding having sky in these, and you can see light spots up here as well. Avoiding having sky in these is quite beneficial to make sure that the viewer's eye isn't wandering out of the scene. The problem with this wider scene is this little sapling here where the branches come over the silver birch is more prominent than the last shot. In the last shot I moved the frame over to the side to kind of make sure this area of the tree wasn't included in it. If I just go back to that now, you can kind of see I've pushed the silver birch over to the left-hand side of the frame, anchored it with the light beams on the right-hand side of the frame to make sure that it's balanced. This shot doesn't necessarily, well, it does have the balance, but it brings that more into the frame. And I find that little tree there really, really distracting. Obviously, though, still a beautiful scene. It's still an image I like. This is like hypercritical stuff, potentially, but it's thinking about things like this, looking back at your images and looking for what could have been done differently, if anything, or what you could look for that's different in future. It's that will improve your photos as you go on. I could think about cropping this slightly differently to take that distracting area out the top there. And that kind of works. I feel like that loses something though by doing that. You've got this tree here on the on the left hand side, sorry, and I quite like the structure of that and how it holds you in on this side. It almost balances quite nicely with here. The light on all these little bits of silver birch up here is really beautiful as well. This cobweb going across here, I'm undecided if I like it or not. It's obviously a natural part of what's going on in that scene, but the way the light catches it, it does feel like it's a bit distracting. It almost looks like an errant power line or something like that, so I might be tempted to remove that. This is another variation on the same scene, and you can see here what I mean about it being too bright at the top. The fog, like I said, was moving so quickly, it's clearly pretty much gone in this shot, and this big bright patch here is, to me, really distracting. But I just love the light on these leaves coming through here. It is just beautiful. I did make a bit of a mistake in this session as well, in that I didn't take my polarizing filter. And a polarizer is a really important tool if you are shooting woodlands because it cuts the glare off the leaves. I wonder if some of this glare off the ferns in the foreground, not just in this shot, but in the previous shots as well, I just wonder if it's just a little bit too distracting and the polarizer would have helped with that. So if you're ever out shooting woodlands, always make sure you've got a polarizer with you, because if you're dealing with wet leaves, it's a really crucial tool. I stayed around the area and I was still looking for patches of fog. There was a little bit in this, and I love how this tree was backlit, but given what we'd just seen, it was nowhere near as strong an image as the previous ones. I took another shot of the same tree, but slightly wider. I like this a lot more when I took it than I do now, and I just think part of it is the fog has drifted out and there's less separation between front and back. The lighting on the silver birch compared to the dark trees behind gives it some nice separation. But it just goes back to what I'm saying about feeling and emotion, and that fog really adds so much of that to me. It adds that mystery and that calm that keeps drawing me back to places like this. Following this, the light just got a bit harsh. I was trying to balance this silver birch here with this other little tree in the background. I've probably not left enough room between them, but at this point I was starting to concentrate more on the video I was producing, because I knew the light was getting a little bit too much for photography, as demonstrated here. It's really harsh light now on the top of these ferns compared to the shadows of the silver birch. But I guess that's one of the things you get if you are shooting into the sun. If I was shooting with it more side lit, that might have made a bit more of a difference. I like this tree, but it doesn't translate well to a good photo. It is just too messy. There's too much going on. This is really distracting here. I like the color of the ferns in the camera, but it just doesn't translate to me at all. This one's got potential. I like the framing of it. I love how it leads you up in this regression of trees and the shapes of them. I think this fence here, though, just is a bit of a distraction. Again, if there was fog here, just giving that extra separation, that extra atmosphere, I think that would have made a real difference with that particular scene. The final image I wanted to show is this one. Again, light's got a bit harsh, but I quite like using these two foreground silver birches to frame this one in the center. There's some real hot spots here, though, so technically speaking, it's not great. It would have worked better before, but before I was here taking this one, which, as I said, is absolutely my favorite from that morning. In terms of editing this image, if I go back to the original, that is what it looked like out of camera. The first thing I then did was crop it to how I liked it. I think I felt like this bright bit up top was a bit distracting. There was a bit of wasted space here on the right hand side. So by the time I got my crop in place, we were looking at an image that was more like this. I then do what I do on every single photo, and I go to my presets. And one of the presets I like the most and is my most used is this Mormon Road preset, so named because it was developed for an image I shot at Mormon Road in the Grand Teton National Park. I then wanted to make sure attention was drawn more to the center of the frame, and I often add a bit of a vignette, so that was the next step. The Mormon Road preset, I often use it for images where there's quite a bit of sky in them. So there is a mask that comes down from the top of the frame like so. My next step was to remove that mask because I didn't want it in this image. I didn't feel like the top of the frame needed darkening compared to the rest of it. I then tweaked the crop a little bit more, or at least I think I did. I then decided I needed to concentrate the viewer's attention more to this area here where the light is, and I did that by adding a radial gradient. So I added a radial gradient there and then made some tweaks to contrast, to highlights, to the blacks, also to the clarity, and I took the desaturation down as well, which just gives it that sort of glow that you can see there. And that was pretty much it. Like I said in my last video, I don't like to spend ages editing my images. It's often just a preset and a few tweaks from there. Apparently I did add that linear gradient back in from the top just to darken this section of the image, but I don't know. I think I quite like it. It lessens the distraction of this bit. I don't know whether I should have that on or off. Let me know anyway in the comments below. So I think by doing something like this, that you always will learn something. There is something to be learned from every single image, whether it's the technical stuff about the settings that you have your camera on, whether it's about composition, whether it's about how you position yourself, the angle of the shot, the lighting in the shot, how components of a photograph are arranged. Every single photo, the good photos, the bad photos, there are always opportunities for learning, which is why I love sitting down with images like this and not just editing them, but actually looking at them and considering what could I do differently next time? What should I have done, or what do I feel like I should have done there and then to make this shot better? That is one of the best things you can do to improve your photography. Obviously, you need to go out and take the shots. Obviously, you need to close the gaps in your learnings between things you don't know and things that you want to know. But by constantly reviewing your own images and looking at ways that you can improve on your own images, that's a real fast track. And like I said, it can be done in an evening. You can spend 15 minutes just looking at a few images on Lightroom, working out what you could do differently. And I think that will really help you improve as a photographer. Now, to be in with a chance of winning that print, you need to be subscribed to my newsletter. And that link is just below. I'm going to send out a newsletter in a few days' time, and anyone that replies to that newsletter will be entered in the draw to win a print. It is that simple. So check out the link below, click that. I really hope this has helped, because I think breaking down images in that way and learning how to do it yourself, like I said, is a really awesome thing to do. in terms of improving your photography. I have done another video like this before that people got a lot of value from. So if you want to know more about breaking down different images, you can check that out right here.